Hey guys, haven't seen you since last year. I hope you all enjoyed your New Year's celebrations. So as you may have seen from the title, the city is now called Centauris. Thank you so much to Nathan White for the comment. I thought it was a great name. To be fair, it doesn't take much to beat GeoCity. That was just terrible. So anyway, we're going to start this episode with some terraforming. As you can see, I'm making a bit of a mountain off here to the side of our city. And this is for a few reasons, but the main reason is we are going to put an airport up here on a very high level, and I want it built into this hillside or mountainside to make it look a little bit more natural. I also think that this is going to help frame the city really well. I'm going to use the same method we have with the rest of the city for the edge of the level with the blowing up pod cars. But let's just take a minute to talk about the logistics of the airport. Now, with a conventional airport, there is no way you would have it here. It's normally out of the city, which means there's quite a commute between the airport and the city maybe. But maybe in the future, the airports are sort of less intrusive. Maybe the planes are also near silent and have really small emissions. I think if that was the case, you'd definitely have an airport that was more discreet and could be moved closer to the city, if not right inside it like we're going to do right here. This means that the commute into the city from the airport is literally only 1 or 2 minutes. So you can see here I've set up a pretty conventional airport with the airport's DLC, although my runways are very short. I want to sort of make it look like it's more of a landing pad. It's also suspended, and I've used Terra networks to remove the terrain from underneath the runway part. There's also an underground road that connects the airport terminal back into the city. This is purely to have it function correctly in-game. As beautiful as our old classic terminal is, it doesn't really fit the style of our city, so I want to change the aesthetics of it. Now, it's quite fiddly and temperamental setting the airport up here, and once it's going, I don't want to bugger around with it too much, so I'm going to leave the airport as is and just cover over it. I'm actually using the Monorail train from Skibiff's Invictus series, blowing it up massive with PO and using that as a terminal. I think that looks really cool. I love the shape of it, the glass is in a perfect spot, and that is literally going to be it for the terminal. There's only a few other little minor things I do. I really want to go with simplicity for this airport if I can. So to finish off this airport area up here, we've got to have the monorail system come in here. We've got to have some serious public transport coming out of here because there's pretty much no reliance on the road at all, other than to get the airport functioning in-game. So the monorail station I want to place right out the front next to the road so it's got good access, and then I'm just going to cover it over with a glass building, much like the style we've got around the rest of the city. We're also going to have a lot of green spaces up here, and there's going to be waiting areas as well, so if you're waiting on a plane or whatever, you can just come outside and relax in the sun. You'll see that I've left one end of the monorail station just sticking out with tracks. This is a level we're going to run later on in the series. Future airports might be much more sophisticated than this, but I was pretty desperate to make it function and work in game. I love the animation of these planes coming in, and the original or vanilla planes weren't really cutting it. I also know from a few other series that I've done that these awesome planes are available on the workshop from a creator named Detox. As you can see here, they have got heaps of them available, and a couple of them are perfect for the series, so knowing that he had these was a big part of building an airport like this. And I think you guys will agree, these look much more appropriate coming in, and they look really cool actually. So that's a big part of the puzzle, but that's not the final part. I still want this airport to look much simpler than it does now, so I'm going to cover over the runways and pretty much everything that covers the ground in the airport with a white surface. Maybe with the technology on offer, they don't need the lines painted, it's sort of maybe guided by computers or whatever. Switching it to night mode is actually pretty cool because you can see the original lights from the runway are still coming through the white surface, and I don't mind this. I think it looks pretty cool. So now we're just going to do the finishing touches around the airport. I want to make a couple of these edges a bit nicer and a bit rounder, and I'm also going to introduce those white flowing arches we've got everywhere to tie the airport right in with our city. I need to start calling it Centauris, I really do. One thing I haven't done a lot of in Centauris so far is detail, and I'm going to change that right here because I want to add heaps of detail into the city. I also have to be careful though because we're going for a minimalistic sort of contemporary futuristic style city here, and I don't want to clutter it with needless props. But my understanding is there's a balance between a cold, dead, lifeless city and a city that sort of feels and looks lived in. So I truly believe that there's a compromise to be made here, somewhere between the two. And I think that props and some things of the like are definitely going to help it feel more lived in. So I'm going to add some nice clean white tiles to the ground. We've got a couple of good old coffee shops up here and a few commercial spaces. There's also a futuristic looking monument and a nice fountain, and then a few planters with some nice trees and stuff in them. And I really like the contrast of this area to the rest of the city when it's done. I've left some of these green spaces empty so that I can place buildings on them later on. This little space here just atop the dam is going to get the treatment right now. I'm putting a couple of buildings up here, and one of them is going to go around our monorail track for no other reason other than it'll look cool to see the monorail go through the top of the building. I've got another really beautiful building here with some gardens on it from quad riders that we're going to put in place right next to that as well. And to top these buildings off and sort of really make them look like part of the city, I'm going to use the text customization function with procedural objects to add a white decal to them. I'm going to tone it down a little bit so it's not blinding, and also just try and carefully apply it to parts of the building. I don't want the entire thing white. These buildings also have cube surfaces in them to make them function in game, so I make sure there's pedestrian paths and doors where needed. Next, I just want to pop over to our food production area and extend it a little wee bit. It looked a little bit funny how I left it in the last episode, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger and just clean it up a bit. This monorail station is situated right in the middle of the levels on level 2, so one way goes up to the airport and the other way goes down to ground level. At this point, the airport is becoming really popular. There's about 200 people a week coming in, and the majority of them are coming down to this station, so I really want to make it look a little bit more pretty. I'm also pretty keen on leaving it open where I can, so I can see the monorail going into the station and the people getting on. I just want to hide the rest of it basically. I also add some decals and a bit of a fancy entrance down the bottom where the main door is, and it's pretty simple when it's finished, but I think it looks pretty good. I want to turn the end of the spillway into an aqueduct that carries the water over and into the main part of the river. To do this, I need to use clipping networks. These don't remove the terrain, they only remove its visibility, which means the water here just looks like it's floating in the air. Then I can proceed to use surface networks to hide the clipping, and then a prop made with procedural objects to create the aqueduct. These get placed very closely to the floating water, and then I add just a few more props to hide the clipping. There's also some paths I lay underneath it, just because I think it'd be really cool to have the citizens walking underneath it. I may come back in future and do some sort of a water processing plant, but for now, this will do. The two glowing rings you've just seen me place down are eventually going to become a 2-leveled garden area around a big residential building. I need to put some roads in here to have this all function properly. With all the mods available on the workshop, I definitely could have built this city without these roads. I could have just put a spawn point back to one road on the edge of the city and had it run that way, but it still doesn't run that effective doing it like that. It's really boring getting into why, so I'm not going to. But having these roads really makes the city function properly, and the reason I want it to function is just to have people walking around everywhere and have the city animated and actually working. I believe that this in real life would have 90% of the roads in tunnels underneath the surface, but that's just not achievable in city skylines if I want it to function. Some of the roads are definitely underground and probably where they should be, but a lot of them have to be hidden very carefully. And you can see here I'm really jamming the cubes in here. This is going to be a very busy part of Centauris later on. My prediction is this is going to be pretty much bang smack in the middle of our city when it's finished. So to finish this area off for now, I'm using this beautiful building from Quad Riders. I really love the shape of this, and I put that in place and then use that text customization to change the colour on just one part of the facade, then get that pedestrian path running into the building in the right spot. I appreciate you viewing today's episode. Thank you so much. If you've enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up for me. It helps me out. And if you have any suggestions for what you think you'd like to see in the city, please add a comment. Have a great weekend, everybody, and I will see you in the next episode. See you later.